The Warriors are back to their winning ways, and Draymond Green is back next game, which could be a massive, massive game. Look, I want to say this before we start the show. Congratulations to the NBA. You have hooked me with the in-season tournament because a game on Tuesday that ordinarily would have some emotional attachment to it because the Warriors are playing the Kings, now it could have massive implications because the winner of that game could very easily win the group that the Warriors are playing in. It could mean the Warriors are going to the quarterfinals. I'm going to discuss all that and so much more next. The Warriors won tonight. Things are looking up. What a way to get into the weekend. The Warriors have a nice reprieve. Let's break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors, excuse me, your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Sorry, I got choked up reading all the chat. The chat is lively on a Friday night, day after Thanksgiving. Happy belated Thanksgiving, everyone. Hope you folks all had fun with your families, if that's what you did, or if you did my plan, which was hanging out with my dog and catching up on work. Whatever you did, I hope it was fun and relaxing. I do hope you had a chance to hang out with your family. The Golden State Warriors came away victorious tonight in the final game of Draymond Green's suspension. I hope I have that right. He's been out for the last 5 games because of that unfortunate incident involving Rudy Gobert and those monstrous arms of his finding their way around Rudy Gobert's neck and squeezing. It was an interesting sight for sure, but it resulted in a Draymond Green 5-game suspension. He will be back. One player that was back tonight that I want to start off with in terms of giving some love to and just giving accolades to because he deserves it, and that is Gary Payton II, a player who you rarely, if ever, will read headlines about, will read stories about when it comes to the stat line. And tonight, for example, a perfect example of that. He played almost 19 minutes. He was 2 for 3 from the field, had 3 whopping field goal attempts, one of those being a 3-point attempt, which he almost airballed. Did have 3 rebounds in this game, had 4 personal fouls in this game, had a steal, 2 turnovers, and had a block. Now, ordinarily you'd think, okay, why are you reading those stats to me? Because Gary Payton II is not like everyone else. Gary Payton II tonight, in a game where the opponent's highlight is Victor Wembanyama, a player who, by the way, in the first half of tonight's game was wearing a jersey where his name was misspelled. I believe it was missing a letter, and they had a jersey change at halftime. That by in itself is weird. I mean, that rarely, if ever, happens. I grew up where baseball cards, if they had any weird peculiarities to it, were suddenly worth a fortune. I always think back to Cal Ripken's brother, Billy Ripken, with a very friendly, kid-friendly, more specifically, message on the bottom of his bat that had the F word on it. And that baseball card was gold. And I wonder if something like that exists today. I know NFTs are much more the rage than baseball/basketball cards. But regardless, Wembanyama, for one half of basketball tonight, wore a jersey that was missing a letter. But I bring him up because Gary Payton II, early in this game, had a momentum-shifting block on him that sent a resounding message. I don't care how big you are. I'm Gary Payton II. I'm the little big man on this team and in the NBA. I'm going to block your ass and send you out of here. So kudos to Gary Payton II. I heard Steve Kerr mentioning in the postgame comments as well. In fact, there's some sound that has come in courtesy of NBC Sports Bay Area where Kerr has some comments. Why don't we hear what he has to say immediately following tonight's victory by the Golden State Warriors? Much more closer than I think anyone who's a member of Dub Nation would have preferred. 118-112 was the final score. And that score, by the way, has implications for the in-season play-in tournament. No, the in-season tournament. That's all it's called. Because differential matters. They're taking a page out of the soccer playbook where when it comes to tiebreakers, the differential, in other words, the margin of victory, how many points you have versus how many you've given up, matters in terms of tiebreakers. So the Warriors beating the Spurs tonight by just 6 might come back and bite them in the ass, because if my math is correct, the Sacramento Kings, who are a game ahead of the Warriors, these two teams play each other Tuesday on a nationally televised TNT broadcast, where I really hope the Warriors send a message where Charles Barkley has to eat some words himself. The last time they were on TNT, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, but if memory serves correct, Charles Barkley was calling the Warriors cooked on that broadcast. Let's hope the Warriors send a message there. But more importantly, the Sacramento Kings are a plus 19 in differential. So if the Warriors beat the Kings, and this is where maybe someone can clarify for this, if it ends up being, I believe, a 3-team tie, meaning if the Warriors, the Kings, and the Timberwolves all finish with a 3-1 record, then that differential will be the tiebreaker. And that's where a game like tonight could come back to bite the Warriors in the ass. Again, they were a plus 5 right now, meaning in the 3 tournament games they've played so far, they've outscored the opponents by a total of 5 points. I'm trying to read the chat here. So to see if anyone just has some insights in terms of that in-season tournament. But if I'm not mistaken, if it ends up being a 3-way tie, point differential comes into play. Genji Gok, thank you. But what I'm curious about is, where does head-to-head come into that? I've been trying to do research as part of the reason why actually this show started late tonight. I was trying to figure out like what happens in terms of just a head-to-head. Is it a tiebreaker situation? Because in that case, Minnesota owns the tiebreaker over the Warriors, but then the Kings own the tiebreaker over the Timberwolves. And then if the Warriors win Tuesday night, they'll own the tiebreaker over Sacramento. And if that's the case, then I think it comes down to differential. Because XO Wonder here writes, point differential will matter if the Warriors beat the Kings, because if they win, that's the tiebreaker. But then the Warriors don't have the tiebreaker over Minnesota. So that's where I'm wondering, if all 3 teams finish with a 3-1 record, that's where the differential will have to come into play. And that is where the Warriors, in theory, on Tuesday night, might have to beat the Kings by 15 in order to win that tiebreaker. We've never been in a situation in professional basketball and NBA basketball, I don't even know if I've ever seen it in college, where the margin of victory suddenly matters. Yet we could see ourselves in a situation Tuesday night. And Exo Wonder says the Timberwolves are going to lose to OKC, so it won't matter. But if it's going to be a 3-way tie, I think that's where it's going to come down to, is differential. And in a situation like that, the Warriors might have incentive late fourth quarter to run up the score. As weird as that sounds, there was a scenario just recently, I think, where Joel Embiid put up a 3 late in the game of an in-season tournament game for that exact reason, where differential matters. It's fascinating. So I'm very curious to see what happens Tuesday night. In terms of, again, if the Warriors win, there's also the wild card. That's another situation at play here, where even if the Warriors don't win Group C, which is the group they're in, there is one wild card team. And so, and again, I don't know if there's multiple teams in that situation. I don't know how the tiebreaker is going to come down there, because right now the Houston Rockets could finish with a 3-1 record. The Phoenix Suns have a 3-1 record. And then the Warriors and Timberwolves could also have a 3-1 record. So I don't know if differential will come down there as well in terms of who gets the wild card. But regardless, it's fun. I mean, look, congratulations to the NBA. It is late November. In a time of year where people normally do not give any you-know-whats about the NBA outside of the basketball junkies like myself. And yeah, Genji Gok, again, Genji Gok writes here in the chat, if the Warriors beat Sacramento, do they win the wild card? I don't know exactly, because there might be 3 or 4 teams who finish with a 3-1 record. The Kings will be in the mix. The Suns will be in the mix. The Houston Rockets will be in the mix. Maybe the Minnesota Timberwolves will also be in the mix. The Kings might not even be the team that the Warriors have to worry about if that happens, if they win the differential battle. I'm very curious to see what happens. Adrian, and then there's folks like Adrian Gutierrez, who writes, who cares about the play tournament? You know who cares? The players. The players care a lot. And look, a lot of people have been writing like, what's the big deal? It's $500,000. Like, what does that matter to a player like Stephen Curry, a player like Anthony Edwards, who has a max deal? Look at an NBA roster real fast. For every Steph Curry, for every multi-millionaire who's pulling in 10, 20, $30 million a season, there is probably 5+ players who are making $5 million, the vet minimum. For $500,000 for those players means a lot. And excuse me, don't kid yourself. Even the players making a ton of money, they want that $500,000. By the way, the team that loses the championship game, those players get $250,000. So look, it's the incentive is there for the players. I do agree that I wish there were more higher stakes. Like I've heard some players suggest rewarding a playoff spot for the team that wins the tournament. Rebel the Sound says it will come down to point differential. But again, how does that come into play if there's 3 teams involved? I'm sorry, how does there? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Does point differential matter if it's just 2 teams tied and one owns the tiebreaker? Because I'm looking at the websites, NBA.com, and they're acknowledging tiebreakers playing a part in this. So the point is, and Walter Washington, who writes, have I been watching how the Warriors have been playing? Yes, but Draymond Green is coming back for 1. 2, the Warriors have a clear advantage over the Kings. I mean, whether you're looking at that preseason game that they were treating like a regular season game, whether you look at this season's regular season games, whether you look at the playoffs last year, the Warriors clearly have a mental edge on this Sacramento Kings team. Don't rule them out is what I'm trying to say. And Genji Gok, you're absolutely right. The rookies particularly care about that in-season tournament. But look, the Warriors won tonight. They beat the San Antonio Spurs 118-112 again in a game that sets up a very interesting Tuesday affair with the Sacramento Kings. In just a moment, I'm going to play some sound from Steve Kerr following tonight's victory. Let's hear what he has to say. First, though, I have to give some love to a sponsor that I want to particularly give some attention to tonight because I want some money, folks. And look, you can win money too. And that sponsor is PrizePicks, and that application is PrizePicks, legal in California, folks. I cannot emphasize that enough. For those of you that don't want to go the VPN route to try and play a FanDuel in a state like California where sports gambling is illegal, there are loopholes for what you call daily fantasy sports, and PrizePicks falls into that. And this is where I decided tonight, why not take advantage of Klay Thompson's struggles? Why not take advantage of Andrew Wiggins' struggles? This game was tight for me, and I'll tell you why. Victor Wembanyama's over-under in terms of whether or not more than or less than, I apologize, in terms of more or less than points for PrizePicks, because the whole premise is you pick a minimum of 2 players, you pick a maximum of 6 players, and you're deciding whether or not they're going to score more or less than a certain number they set. And it might not just be points. It doesn't have to be points. It could be rebounding. It could be assists. It could be an entirely different sport. We had a Black Friday football game today. Brilliant marketing, by the way. And you could have bet on that as well. It could have been rushing yards, passing yards, whatever the stakes are that you're betting on. It's fun. So tonight's game, for example, you have to pick a minimum of 2 players, maximum of 6. I had a 4-teamer going tonight. My 4-teamer was betting that Stephen Curry was going to score more than 24.5 points. PrizePicks, excuse me, I had a hair on my tongue. Reminds me of Crazy Joe DeBola from Seinfeld. Hey, Jerry, I got a hair on my tongue. You know how crazy that makes me? You have to be a Seinfeld junkie to understand the reference. But the goddamn hair is still on my tongue. So I bet a 4-player pick for a docket. I bet on Stephen Curry over 24.5. PrizePicks will sometimes give you promotions, right? So Stephen Curry normally it would be like 28.5, 29.5. They just had a last minute promo. They're like, we're going to give you 4 points right there. Awesome. So I bet on Stephen Curry's point total, scoring more than that of 24.5. Klay Thompson's been struggling. His total was, I believe, 17.5. I thought to myself, why don't we go below that? You know, he's been struggling. I know he's had over 22 games in a row, but that's not consistency is not always the name of his game. And I'm going to go on the lower side. So I decided to bet on the below for that. And then Andrew Wiggins, I think his total was 14. I was like, I'm going to go below that as well. And then Victor Wembanyama, you have to pick at least 1 player from another team. So you have to include a minimum of 2 players from 2 different teams. So I decided, all right, I'm going to go with Victor Wembanyama's point total, which was 19.5. And I decided to go above that, right? He didn't score his 20th point in this game until like the minute 50 mark. I was definitely sweating in that regard. I was like, damn it, because I have 4 players here. I've got 3 of the 4. Klay finished with 15. All he had to do is get below, I believe, 17.5. Andrew Wiggins finished with 10 tonight. I only have to get below, I think, 14. Stephen Curry had yet another terrific game, scored 35 points in this game, shot 11 of 20, was 7 of 13 from the field. The dude had yet another night. Side note, by the way, I don't know if tonight's the night to have this discussion. Stephen Curry should be one of the front runners for MVP, because this Warriors team that right now is 8-9 would be what? 1-15 if they didn't have 1-16. I'm sorry. If they didn't have Stephen Curry, 2-15, this would be an abysmal team. Stephen Curry's impact on this team, to me, makes him more valuable than any other player on any other team in the NBA. Debate me on that. Let's go at it. I still think Stephen Curry got robbed in 2021, 2022. No, I'm sorry. In 2020, 2021, I still think he got absolutely robbed of the MVP by Nikola Jokic. He totally deserved it that year, and he's on pace right now to win it again. He scored 35 points in this game tonight. The dude is the difference between the Warriors winning and losing. Anyways, I bet on Steph with the more than. I bet on Klay Thompson to score less than, Wiggins to score less than, and thank you very much to the rookie Victor Wembanyama for finishing tonight's game with 22 points. So he won me some money, folks, and you can too. PrizePicks is that awesome. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. One more time, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, use the code LockedOnNBA, and you will get a first deposit match. That means whatever you put in, they will match it. So you're actually playing with double what you put in, up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Look, folks, Locked On's launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts at Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. Why don't we listen after I get rid of this banner that I still have on the screen? I apologize for that. Why don't we listen to the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, the 9-time champion, the 4-time champion as a head coach. Whoops, wrong screen. Hang on one second here. Sometimes things aren't that smooth. Why don't we listen one more time to the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, Steve Kerr, following tonight's game. Here's Kerr.
Gary's impact tonight, how would you describe it?
Very similar to what we've watched, with Gary over, really 2 years ago, because last year he was barely with us. But, one of the benefits of playing him is he knows how to play with Steph. It's not just his defense, which is excellent, but when he's on the floor with Steph, that's where some of the off-ball stuff just happens, because Gary recognizes it as well as anybody. And, you'll see him dribble at Steph and get him a hand back, or he'll see him, running free and he'll go screen for him. He'll set a screen and dive, and Steph will hit him in the pocket like he did for the one when he got the layup. So there's definitely a lot of value in playing Gary with Steph, and we're trying to do that more.
Gary's impact tonight.
All right, so that was Steve Kerr talking about what I touched on the show with at the beginning, which was Stephen Curry with Stephen Curry and Gary Payton II playing together. They vibe. I don't think there's any doubt about that, right? So I'm glad Steve Kerr brought that up. I read Stephen Curry's stats during my PrizePicks read. There's a couple chats here I want to get to real fast. Sorry, I'm having some issues here. There we go. And I want to read real fast. One thing, Shyam Natarajan, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. You wrote, "What's with Kerr not letting Steph play the full first and third quarters?" Great question. And the answer to that is he's trying to manage his minutes so that Steph is available more so in the fourth quarter. Even though the strategy worked for 4 championships, and what I'm referring to is minutes. Steph's minutes used to be very simple in terms of its structure. He would play the whole first quarter. He would play the whole third quarter. He would play the second half of the second quarter and the second half of the fourth quarter. What Steve Kerr is trying to do is reduce the minutes in the first, second, and third quarters, so that the collective body of minutes is reduced. Stephen Curry's turning 36 in March. I don't think Steve Kerr and company want him to be averaging the same kinds of minutes that he was early in his career, where he was playing 36 minutes a game on average. They want that number down to like 30, 31, 32. And so that's where they're trying to chunk off those minutes, is by not having him play the full first and third quarter, but also by saving those minutes if Kerr needs Steph to earlier in the fourth quarter. Whereas before you'd see him come in at the halfway mark. Now sometimes you see him come in at the 8-minute mark. Now you see him come in sometimes at the 9-minute mark. So I hope that explains why the minutes have changed for Stephen Curry. It's mostly just to save his energy for late in the game. And it's also to kind of reduce the minutes on a night-by-night basis throughout the regular season. And Rebel to Sounds writes that Curry has been playing 34 minutes. They need to cut it down to 30 to 32. I agree. In fact, let me see. I haven't looked at Curry's minutes lately. Let me see real fast where he's at on that. I just want to confirm that minute number right there. So Steph on the year is averaging 32.9, which again is below what we're accustomed to seeing. Stephen Curry in his career average, for example, with minutes is 34.3. So you're already seeing a reduction from that 34.3 number. And again, that includes his rookie year and runs like that. So this year he's at 32.9, slight reduction, but that's the reasoning for that. The other chat question I'm going to get to has nothing to do with the Warriors, but I'm going to get to it in 1 second after I give some really quick love to FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. And again, we're never ecstatic enough about having FanDuel as a sponsor of this program. You made it big when you have the folks at the number one sportsbook in the country sponsoring your program. And right now it's NFL season. We're in the thick of it. And new customers for FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. The way this works is simple. Look at every game coming up. Look at which games have a massively huge favorite, right? A favorite team that, let's say, is favored by, in the NFL, 10, 15 points. In the NBA, I guess a similar number might work. But the NFL would really work for a bet like this. Find a heavy favorite, bet on them, but don't bet using a spread. Bet using the money line. Normally, a bet like that you wouldn't want to do just because the odds aren't in your favor. Chances are if you bet $100, you might just get $30 profit out of a bet like that. But for this promo, bet $5 on that heavy favorite, bet the money line, and you get $150 in bonus bets. That's as good as cash. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. And by the way, what a throw by Brock Purdy in that game yesterday. Magnificent. That was an all-timer. Kudos to Brock Purdy. Kudos to the San Francisco 49ers. And kudos to FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Here's the question that was in the chat. One final segment, by the way. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. And for the everydayers, this is the first weekend and forever we're going to be taking off. The Warriors lead the NBA, by the way, in games played. They've had a frenetic schedule to start the season. They're going to have a nice extended break. I heard Steve Kerr talking about the fact that they're going to actually run traditional practices this weekend. I'm sure they're going to get a day off in there as well. But the Warriors on the season, they're now 8-9. They played 17 games. Again, that is tied for the most games played in the NBA, or at least they were tied with the Chicago Bulls. And they still are. The Chicago Bulls have also played 17 games. No one else has played that many. So the Warriors are going to get a needed rest. And for the first time all season, they're not playing a game on the weekend. So we're going to be back at it Monday. Kylan Mills will join me for that show. We're going to preview not only what happened this weekend, but leading into that huge Tuesday game against the Kings. Look, the chat has a question, though, about Josh Giddey. Very tricky subject to talk about. And Rex Stone, by the way, kudos. Number one hardest schedule as well. You're absolutely correct. The Warriors' strength of schedule has been insane. So for them to come out of this 8-9, having missed Draymond Green for 7 of those 17 games, maybe even more. I think he missed the first game of the season as well. So they basically haven't had Draymond Green for half the season. And even though he's not the same player he was 5 years ago, he hasn't dropped off the way certain other players on this team have. And they need him. There's no doubt in my mind they need him. Last show I talked extensively about the Warriors' defensive needs. It starts with Dre. Gary Payton II is also fantastic. Stoked that he was back on the floor tonight. And again, that block on Victor Wembanyama was incredible. But Draymond Green is back, so that's huge. But so the fact that they haven't had Draymond for half the season, they're 8-9, they're still figuring it out. I still believe the Warriors can make the finals. I'm sticking with that. Until it doesn't happen, I'm that confident in this team. I don't think the Warriors need a dominant second scorer. To me, all they got to do is shore this thing up defensively. So they're going to be fine. All right, it's early in the season, but again, this Josh Giddey thing, weird. It's weird that the whole thing stinks. He was asked today, one of my Locked On colleagues who's been on this program, I think Rylan Stiles is his name. He was on during the summer giving us a preview of Dario Saric and provided phenomenal analysis. He went viral today on social media because he was the one questioning Josh Giddey to comment on the story. And all we're getting from both the head coach and from Giddey is a no comment. So they're not denying it, that doesn't smell good, right? In terms of the metaphorical analysis of this whole situation. It's ugly. I mean, look, Josh Giddey, we may never see him again. He might go to jail. Again, the fact that they did not deny it is pretty wild. And we'll just have to see what happens. All I can say is I'm really happy that the Warriors are not dealing with this story. And I would not want to cover a story like this. I mean, the Anthony Lamb thing last year was a 10th of the drama and potential controversy that this will have. And that stunk. So, I'm not envious of the Thunder right now. The Golden State Warriors, though, I want to read off some numbers tonight. Besides Stephen Curry, who had, again, a fantastic night, Dario Saric is really making a name for himself as the player that they need on a night-by-night basis. Dario Saric, his minutes are going up with each game. It's a trend that I'm seeing for good reason. He played 26 minutes tonight. His shooting has been spectacular, and tonight's no exception. He was 7 for 11 from the field. He was 4 for 7 from deep. Finished this game with 20 points. He was second on the team behind Chris Paul in plus-minus. He was plus 13. The team was doing wonderful things when he was out there, and he's clearly cementing himself as one of the players that is going to need minutes consistently as the season goes along. He stretches the floor offensively. He's not the greatest defender, but he's not horrible at it. And with his size comes solid rebounding as well. He grabbed 7 boards tonight. Saric on the season, I want to read his stats to you there real fast, just because, again, the numbers he's putting up right now are much better than they were early in the year. And we're seeing a lot of growth from him in that department, but he has to play. He has to play. And on the year right now, he's averaging 10.2 points per game. And again, that number is just going up on the season. He's shooting 35.3% from 3. And that number is going up. I'm sure that number is going to be closer to 40 by the end of the year. From the field, he's shooting 43.5%. That should go up for a big. That's actually a bad number. But he's also averaging 6.3 rebounds. So the numbers are there. And again, he's averaging 10.2 points per game. But that's in 21 minutes of play. We're going to see his minutes go up, and for very good reason, because good things happen when he plays. He's certainly not a detriment on this team. So kudos to Dario Saric for the second game in a row, putting up fantastic numbers. Even though they didn't win the last game, great game tonight. So yeah, and I'm seeing people in the chat as well. Ginchi Gawk writing that Saric was fat to start the year. You're implying that he was out of shape. Maybe, who knows? Those folks seem to have a lot of fun in Croatia, his home country, and he's no exception to that. So kudos to Saric. I gave Gary Payton II the love. I want to touch on two of the 2 3-year players, Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, who oftentimes are synonymous with each other, whether it's because they were drafted together. They're not very similar besides that. But Moody got the start tonight. Got to give Kerr credit for that in terms of the ingenuity. And look, maybe Kerr doesn't deserve accolades for that because most other coaches probably would be applying creative moves on a more regular basis. But Moses Moody, he got the start. So good stuff with that. In the first quarter when he played 6 minutes. He was 3 for 3 from the field, had 6 points in this game. And despite having that solid first quarter in those 6 minutes, we didn't see him much else. Like we didn't see him in the fourth quarter at all. He only played 10 minutes the rest of the game. The why of that is weird. I do hope someone asked Steve Kerr about that. In fact, I'm going to check real quick right now and see if any more sound has come down from Steve Kerr. But he had a fantastic game. And kudos to Moses Moody. Now, my good friend Connor Letourneau wrote a piece for the San Francisco Chronicle a day or two ago. Excuse me for that. Talking about Jonathan Kuminga, and there's a few people. I saw a report, for example, from heavy.com, or it was some website like that, where, and again, any story where it says like an anonymous NBA exec, like when that is your source for a story, that is just capital BS and then some, right? That is just literally the definition of clickbait for you right there. So when I saw that the story was quoting an anonymous Western Conference exec, I knew not to take it that seriously. But this article was saying basically that if Jonathan Kuminga doesn't turn things around in a month or so from now, that the team might consider moving him, right? So look, that's not a report. That is pure speculation. That is clickbait at its finest. But it brings up the topic of Jonathan Kuminga because for some reason, people just don't have a lot of patience with this kid. And I don't want to say, oh, Matt Brotherton, by the way, I'm glad you went to the game. Good stuff. Adrian Gutierrez, by the way, is frustrated. The Moses Moody only played 10 more minutes after that excellent first quarter. Kev F writes how to predict the Warriors win or loss, compare free throw differentials. That's a good point. The Warriors, by the way, have improved drastically in that category. From last year, they were last in the NBA in free throw attempts. They're now in the middle of the pack this year. Tonight, they had 24 free throw attempts to just 12 for the San Antonio Spurs. But I agree with you. That is a very important stat there. But I want to talk about Kuminga real fast. Speaking of free throw attempts, there are only 2 players on this team right now that are consistently getting to the line. One is Stephen Curry, and he didn't get to the line that much tonight. Steph finished the game. Actually, he had 6 trips, so actually he did. He was 6 for 6 from the free throw line. Look, he's one of the greatest free throw shooters in the history of this game. I forgot he got a couple trips to the line at the very end of the game. But Jonathan Kuminga is second on the team in free throw attempts. And the reason why is because he's one of the few players on this roster who has his level of athleticism, who has a decent amount of size. And his strategy, his thinking offensively is always attack, attack, attack. And that's how you get to the line, right? Referees have a very hard time holding their breath when players attack the basket if there's any contact. They can't help it. They blow that damn whistle a lot, for better or worse, whether it's a good or bad thing. And Kuminga is one of the few players on this roster who's actually getting trips to the free throw line. And that's important, not only for the easy points that come with that, but also for the foul count going up on the other team so that your team can get into the bonus earlier in a quarter versus later. And maybe other players on that team can get into foul trouble. So Kuminga, it's his 3rd year. He's the same age as Stephen Curry. He's the same age as Klay Thompson were their rookie years. He's 4th on the team in scoring behind Steph, Klay, and Wiggins. He's 2nd on the team in free throw attempts. Tonight, he was 5 for 7 from the field, scored 12 points. Look, he's clearly not a player that is lighting it up. And I understand some of the frustration. People wanted Jonathan Kuminga at this point in his career to show the kind of flash, to show the kind of consistency that maybe a player like Anthony Edwards is showing right now. But he's 8th on the team in minutes. 8th. Okay, so unless he starts getting real run out there, when I say real run, I'm talking 25, 30 minutes a game, it is asinine to judge this recently turned 21-year-old kid and think and pretend that he's supposed to be already at an all-star level. You can find exceptions to the rule for players his age. It is not the norm. So anyone out there who's like ready to move on from Kuminga, chill out a little bit, folks, all right? But otherwise, look, the Warriors had a great game, and Giddey, you're absolutely right. He's just not a role player. But they won tonight. We'll be back at this Monday with Kylan Mills. Have a great weekend, everyone. 118-112 the final. The Warriors win! Woo! take us into the weekend. Goodbye, folks. Love you. Peace out.